We're just waiting to see if stream key is still valid and it will pop up. Yes, we are live on Twitch. So those of you that have been following me so far, I have been editing Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode number 259. I've been using Movie Studio, that's Magic's Movie Studio 15.0 Platinum Edition to do the video edit. And I completed that last night. And this is Sunday morning, so that was Saturday night. And it's a shorter episode, about 37 minutes. As you can see, here is the edit. And if you want to know more about that, you can go back and see my last couple of streams. They should be available on Twitch. And if they're not, Twitch. And if they're not, let me know. Get a hold of me at Stargate Pioneer on Twitter, or stargatepioneer@gonnageek.com is my email. And so this is what I did, and then I rendered it. I rendered it by turning off the bump tracks, or the sound effect tracks, the intro, outro, the copy of intro, outro, which is actually just the Gonna Geek pre-roll there, and then the bumps throughout. I probably could combine the bumps and the intro, outro, but I can't because it's got different effects on it. Slightly different volume levels that I allow with both. And then I rendered it, and I just want to show you, if you're not familiar with Magic's Movie Studio, how do you render. You can go Make Movie, or you could project. I believe there is a render as. I use Make Movie, so I'll do that. Save it to hard drive. Go to the advanced options there, and I'm making it into a FLAC because I'm only interested in audio only. I do mono, so it's a lossless. FLAC is a lossless form of a file, so I'm not going to lose anything and any of the raw data. And I render it in 44:1 and 16-bit, which is basically CD quality. So we'll go ahead and do that. I do mono because I'm cognizant, because I have an ear condition. I don't like stereo, because if you ever do an effect in one ear and only have one earbud in, which I do from time to time, I was just doing it yesterday, as a matter of fact, I will not be able to hear it in the other ear. So I am trying to be cognizant of those with similar ear problems, and I release the podcasts in mono. The other thing is, my podcasts are mostly people talking, and as you can see, I only have one microphone, so that means it's going to be mono. Yes, I could record it in stereo, but the only stereo that you're going to hear is the short effects, and as you saw, the effects are such a small part of that entire podcast that let's just go with mono. So again, Make Movie, save to hard drive, advanced options, get into the FLAC. I'll rename the file like audio edit, and then I will render options, make sure I'm not just rendering the loop region only. So if I have something selected, it will only render the one that's selected. This is important because I do pull out outtakes that way. So I have to make sure that's on or off, and then I render. And I'm not going to do that right now because that would take too long. I've already done it, as a matter of fact, and it looks a little bit like this. And as you can see, without the sound effects, there are some gaps in there, but that's okay because we're going to fill those. So this is how I edit in Audacity. This is not the most recent version of Audacity. This is actually 2.0.6. I believe it's 2.3.2 that's out right now as I record this, or as I stream this. So if you want to know the latest and greatest, you're going to have to go somewhere else for now. I do have the latest on my laptop, and maybe I'll edit on my laptop in the future, stream from my laptop in the future, or maybe I'll upgrade this. But in any case, it's not that different. So what I'm mostly concentrating here on is techniques used in editing. You'll see what I'm talking about as we go along. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to create some new tracks. I believe in the newest version of Audacity, you have to go to Tracks, Add New, Audio Track. And I've already created a shortcut, or one came with this version of Audacity, Control-Shift-N. And that's what I'm going to use, Control-Shift-N. I created 4 new tracks. Saw how quick that was. I'm going to move this to the bottom. The reason I'm doing this is because the intro, I have a way that I do the intro. So first of all, it starts with this. This is the pre-roll. This is a little tease that's in front, and I am going to Control X or cut that, and I'm going to go up here. I'm going to press this skip to home button, and I'm going to do a Control V, and there you go. Then we're going to click this button here, which is fit selection. And then I'm going to use another shortcut that I've created. It's called Truncate Silence, and I use Alt-T. But if you don't have that created, and I'll show you how to create it in a second, go to Effects, go to Truncate Silence, and I use 0.85 seconds in Audacity. If you heard me before on the other edits in Magic Movie Studio, I mentioned 0.85 to 1.5. I'll end up adding some silence from time to time if this is too short, but 8.85 in this podcast seems to work pretty well. So we're just going to go with it. I'm going to cancel out of here because I like using the shortcut. How do I create the shortcut? Go to Edit, Preferences. You go to Keyboard and Truncate Silence because that's already in effect. And then you can set it down here. You just basically type in Alt-T and that shows up. And then you set it. And bingo, you have your shortcut for Truncate Silence. If you don't have one already. I use it quite a bit. So Alt, then Alt-T. Oh, that was doing the entire...
This time on episode...
I just want to do that. Somehow I selected everything. Excuse me. The perils of early morning live stream. SP has to cough. All right. Now, how do I fill these other four tracks? This is the Gonna Geek pre-roll and the intro to the show. And we'll have to make sure that this button is pressed, sync lock tracks. You should have done that before. I'm sorry for not putting it out. If you don't have that locked, here's what happens. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to the beginning of this track just to show you. Boom. I have now overwritten the space that I just want one track saying with this. So I'm going to Control Z that. I'm going to click that. So that's what would happen when I pasted that before. So I've already queued up the track for the intro. I'm just going to select that all. If you double click anywhere in the track, it's going to select the whole thing. So that's what I did. Double click. Also, Control A will select everything on your sheet. And since it's just this, that will work too. But if I would do the same thing in the other track, I would actually select all the tracks. So Control C, and then I'm going to toggle back using the Alt Tab key here. However you go back and forth between windows, that's up between you and Windows. And then I'm going to select right here. And Audacity has a nice thing which will clip to the beginning and end of tracks. So that's exactly where I want to be, at the end of this track or at the beginning of this track down here. And then I'll Control V. And that is how you paste a version of the track in. Now, I already know that this is pretty loud. This is one of the older pre-rolls that we have. So I'm going to double click this little volume button here, this gain button, and I'm going to go -6. And that's going to quiet it up a little bit. The combination of the voice and the sound effect actually raises the overall perceived volume. So I want to reduce that a little bit on this particular one. I just know that for years of doing this over, let's see, it's 5 years of doing Gonna Geek pre-rolls. All right, now I need to get that intro in, which I have created a template, which I don't actually use the template to create new files in, although I could. I don't. I actually just create it from scratch like I'm doing. But I have all the sound effects that are arranged in a template, so it's easy for me to find. And right now, I want to do the intro up here. I have changed the intro, by the way, throughout the years, and all the older intros are here. Like if I ever have to go back and master an older episode, I can go back and select one of these as needed. And basically, what I've changed is just that track. This is the speech, the person that's introing the show. Wing actually created Nightwing on the Gonna Geek Network. He was one of the original podcasters on the Gonna Geek Network. He actually created this show, and I took it over in episode 14. And he had a robot voice that did the intro, which I thought actually was pretty neat at the time because it was, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. AI, so to speak. But I've come to learn that most people like a human voice. So I've had a human voice, actually my daughter doing it for quite some time. I believe since the first year. I don't know when the first episode was. I should go back and look. But she has had to re-record depending on what's going on with the show. First it was level 7, then it was level 10. That was just security level. Then it was the different directors of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So right now we're on I forget which number, but it's a new director, and we're in an incredibly long hiatus. So this intro is going to be stable for another year here. So I'm going to double click, and that's going to select everything. And I'm going to use this is one way to do it, by the way. I'm going to use the selection tool. I have the left mouse button held, and I can move this in and out. I just want to select the entire thing of on top and make sure I select on bottom. I don't want to select any other track. I don't want to go all the way down here. And once you've done that, by the way, you can't undo it. I haven't figured out a way to undo it anyway. So I just click a track and then start from the beginning. That's how I do it. Just select that piece, Control C, and then toggle, and then select both tracks. And I do this by clicking Shift and then the down key. And I've got both tracks selected because I'm going to have to paste into. Conceivably, I could select a different portion, but since I want it not to override this track, and that's probably just by long-term SPism, I'll Control V and paste it in here. That way I don't have to worry about this track running over. As you see later, I'll actually move that track over to about right there. And talking about moving stuff, I have to select this stuff. Oh, here is where we work the time sync. I will unclick the sync lock tracks, and I will zoom in and then slide on over. There we go. Too far. And then I will select this time shift tool. This will move all of what I have selected on over. A little bit more, a little bit more. Ooh, too far. I was just having fun moving the time sync. I know in the pre-roll that right about here, there is audio artifact basically that I like to overlap with. And to get it close, I am going to, I'll zoom in again. There's another way that I do it, but if I'm teaching somebody, might as well teach here. Okay, see, it's right in there, that little dip. And that is when I start here. It's not exact. I haven't said 31 point whatever seconds because these change, these pre-rolls in length change just a little bit all the time. It depends on how long people talk, actually. Steven, who is the network owner, he creates these and they are slightly different lengths. So I can't say it's going to start at a specific point in time, but I overlap right there. And then we'll go out and bingo. Let's hear how that all sounds.
This time on episode 259 of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., we discussed The Punisher Season 1, Episode 3, Kandahar, and the weekly Marvel news.
I'm Jeannie from Tyrion's Landing, a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the one you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
You have been granted clearance by Director Alfonso Mack Mackenzie. Stand by for a S.H.I.E.L.D. debriefing. All information to be discussed here is classified and may only be discussed among agents granted clearance by the S.H.I.E.L.D. Director.
Now it's time for your scheduled debriefing. Saying that for years. All right, now is the time to move over the little intro. I'm going to zoom way out here to the entire thing. And I know I have done this in a few segments. There's the intro segment. There is the actual meat of the episode of the main topic. And there is a news section, which is right here. Actually select it, which is right here. We didn't have any feedback section this week. And then here is the outro section. And I could tell because those are the segments that I just edited on the movie studio, but also because there's little breaks. Now, as you can see, there are other little breaks, which we'll take care of with Truncate Silence in a little bit, but I just know that that's about it. This is a shorter bump, longer bump, longer bump. So I just know what I'm looking for. So I will go ahead and zoom in, and I will use a little trick, splitting the track, and I will do Control-I, splits the track, and then I will move that part of the track out of the way. I'm concentrating only on the intro piece right now. So I'm going to use the selection tool. I'm going to double click here. I'm going to do the Control-T for Truncate Silence, and there we go. That is now ready to go. I am now going to move that over to about there. I know actually I'm going to have to move it in a little bit further. Let's zoom out a little bit. No, in. You will find in your audio there's different keys and different ways to look at things. I could actually pick an exact moment that I want to start speaking, and I don't know how well you can see this on the Twitch stream, but there are little clusters in the audio right here, here, and here. I've always gone off the third cluster. So as I move it in, it's a little bit darker. I'm about right there. So this is how this combined sounds like. Now it's time. I could have chosen any time to start. That seemed to be the right way, the right spot to start when I first started editing this back in 2014. And I have chosen the same spot all the time. Consistency. I haven't had a complaint. Although I have had a couple of VAs have difficulty finding that, probably because they just couldn't zoom in and out correctly enough to see it. I'm zoomed in even more than I was before, so you can kind of see it. It's a little indenture in the waveform as well. So it's like goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down, goes up. So it's the third hump in. So that is where I've chosen. All right, now what I'm going to do, since it is correct in its spot, and I've already done the truncate sign, you know what? I'm not going to do that yet. I was going to take the sync lock off, but I'm not going to do that until I get past this right here. Right here. And then I will take it off, or I will put it back on. Here we go. Now it's time for your scheduled debriefing. I'm Director SP.
I'm Agent Haley.
And I'm Consultant Michelle.
Welcome to Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., a Marvel Comic Universe fan show. This show is recorded on Sunday, October 21st, 2018, live from the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. studios and broadcast worldwide via www.geeks.live. Come on in and join our live chat as we record. Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a fan-based podcast on the ABC television show Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., now in the 22nd hiatus week following the season 5 finale, the multiple Marvel Netflix series, and the Marvel cinematic and comic book universes in general.
Because of killing for concert tickets.
If you'd like to talk to us about all the people...
I'll listen to that real quick. There are people sleeping in the house, so I don't want to crank up the volume too much.
Because of killing for concert tickets.
If you'd like...
I'm going to silence this. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to use Control L, which I've set up as a shortcut for silence. See how that sounds.
Killing for concert tickets.
If you'd like to talk...
That's tough. The reason I'm having problems there is that could be Haley's laundry sounds, or it could be her. This is a little bit of artistic expression there on how to deal with that. Probably nobody will care except for me.
Because of killing for concert tickets.
If you'd like to talk...
All right. Yep, that's what we'll go with. I will choose to believe those were laundry sounds that I just didn't take out before. If you want to know more about that, go watch my previous Twitch stream.
Because of killing for concert tickets.
If you'd like to talk to us about all the people you've killed for concert tickets and which concerts, you can visit our website, legendsofshield.com, where you'll find all of our contact information.
If you want to leave us a message about the best birthday present you've ever gotten, you can leave us a voicemail at 844-THE-BUS1. That's 844-843-2871.
You can share your kill...
Breath sound, Control L, silence.
871.
You can share your kill and concert photos on our Facebook page, Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. Podcast.
You can find us on Twitter at Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D.
You can find our videos where we won't discuss what you'll see on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/GonnaGeek.
You can tell your Amazon device to enable Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. skill.
And no matter how ashamed of us they are, Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a proud member of the GonnaGeek.com network.
Yes, proud enough to have a special little niche and an announcement, which we will be making next week. Agent Lauren is not with us today. She needed to take the night off, and I granted her the night off, so she will be back next week.
I wasn't told we got PTO.
You've been taking quite a bit of PTO lately, so whether or not you realize you had it, you've been taking it.
True story.
All right. In the meantime, we're going to get on with the main event of this podcast, which is Punisher Kandahar. All right, now the bump track. Add a new one in there. Bumps. That's how you name tracks, by the way. Name. All right, let's cycle back to the template. I know that's the bump I want. Control, double click, Control C to copy, toggle back, boom. There we go. Now I'm going to go out all the way. I'm going to clip that. Control I, move that away. I'm going to select everything. Do Control T to truncate silence. Oh, let's see how much silence is truncated there. I don't know if you saw this or not. 21 minutes, 30 seconds is the length. And Alt T will truncate it to 19 minutes, 46 seconds. So I've just taken out 1 minute and 45 seconds worth of my listeners' time. I gave that to my listeners. That is silence that doesn't need to be there. Talked about that before on the video edit. So if you watch the video, you are spending 1 minute and 45 seconds in that segment longer than you should have, in my opinion. All right, now I'm going to move that over. That little segment of track, I'm going to take the sync lock off. I'm going to combine this, crossfade it, if you will. That sounded pretty good. I think I usually choose that little divot. The Punisher. Oh, maybe it's a little bit after that. The Punisher aired all 13 episodes, and they didn't really air it, but it was placed on Netflix on November 17th, 2017. Season 2 is set to air sometime in 2019, so we're all 13 episodes, and they didn't really air. The Punisher aired all 13 episodes, and they didn't really air it, but it was placed on Netflix on November 17th, 2017. Season 2 is set to air sometime in 2019, so we're a little bit ahead of the game this time. Haley, who directed this episode of Kandahar?
This was directed by Andy Goddard. This was directed by Andy Goddard, who has 30 directing credits starting in 1998. Those credits include 6 episodes of Torchwood, 1 of Doctor Who, 5 of Downton Abbey, 1 Daredevil, 1 Iron Fist, 2 episodes of The Punisher, and 2 episodes of Luke Cage, R.I.P.
We will be talking about that R.I.P. statement a little bit later in the show. Now, Michelle, who wrote this episode of Kandahar?
This episode was written by Steve Lightfoot, has 13 writing credits starting in 2004, including 20 episodes of Hannibal, RIP Hannibal, 1 Narcos, and 4 of The Punisher. He's also the creator and executive producer of the show, and The Punisher is based on the Marvel Comics by Jerry Conway, John Romana Sr., and Romana Sr.
This is a spot where I would love to help Michelle out and combine the two, but I can already tell looking at here, there's no way I'm going to be able to replace her mistake here with her restart here. And as a co-host, you need to know that not all the times you restart is going to be able to be edited out in post. And this is one of those cases. We like our co-hosts to actually restart when they make a mistake, but you have to know when to restart. In this particular case, it was done at a time. If it was the same tonal structure, I would be able to go in really closely into the waveform. I'd be able to cut this out like somewhere like right here and choose a same like up path over here and cut it on in on the R. But it's not the same volume and it's not the same tone either. So in the middle of a word, that's really difficult to do. I have done it before and I could try it. And if it doesn't sound right, then I don't do it. So just pointing out that this is one of those cases where I have to let it be.
Conway, John Romana Sr., and Ross Andrew.
Haley, it's been a while since you've been on the show, but we usually, when you're on here...
Wasn't I here last week?
We talked
Yes.
to you about the title of the show and what it means to the actual theme of the show. So regardless of whether you were here last week or not, would you like to enlighten us on what Kandahar means?
I'll enlighten you on a lot of things, SP. So Kandahar obviously is in Afghanistan. It's where Frank did all of the things that he regrets, which are kind of driving the story forward. And along with Frank's regrets, we get What's-His-Face's regrets as well in this episode. It's kind of the things that both of them did that cost them their family. And it's kind of setting up the relationship these two men are going to have going forward. I assume. I haven't seen anything beyond this.
Lieberman / Micro, or are you talking Billy Russell?
Yeah, that guy.
Okay. Micro.
That guy. The guy that was tied to the chair.
Naked.
But
he got away. I mean, he used his mind against
boy.
Frank. Yeah.
Man, that chair must be nasty by now.
I mean, it was probably pretty nasty to start with.
But then he's naked and then getting water dumped on him.
Yeah, but like, he just spent like 18 hours a day sitting in that chair anyways. Like, it was already kind of raunchy.
At least it was one of those standard faux leather office chairs where you can wipe it down really quick.
That's true. Because if it was one of those cloth ones with that would be really nasty. One of those cloth ones with that would be really ones with.
I'm going to shorten this up. I'm going to shorten it up by deleting that out. Usually in S sound, you can really determine what that sounds like or looks like, and you can cut that out. But unfortunately, it's a little bit low here. We're going to see how that sounds. Ooh. Zoom out. That out.
Was one of those cloth ones. That would be really nasty and moldy and yuck.
Some stank you can't wipe away.
As Haley can tell from experience. We actually got a lot of flashbacks in this episode back to Afghanistan, specifically Kandahar. So we got a lot of the backstory about what exactly happened these guys in their last days in country. And we saw how everything basically fell apart from the colonel on down, including Mr. What do they call him? Agent Orange? The CIA guy?
Agent Orange.
Yeah. Agent Orange, who was in charge of everything. And he was just smug throughout the whole thing. I don't know if I was him, if I would have been that smug when the team came back, broken, bruised, obviously dead, bringing back some members that were dead. I don't know if I would have been that smug on, did you kill the target?
Yeah, I was really happy when Frank decked him being like that.
I was surprised that the others protected him, though.
Protected the CIA guy?
Being like that.
I'll leave that in.
Being like that.
I was surprised that the others protected him, though.
Protected the CIA guy?
Yeah.
They weren't really protecting him. They were protecting Frank.
Yeah, they pulled Frank away so Frank wouldn't kill him.
Right. And this is all in relation to Operation Cerberus, which was not actually an operation, was not authorized by Congress, as Micro told us later. So Frank was basically turned into a hired gun, a mercenary.
They all were, including Russo. We see Frank and Russo, how they work together. And just how Frank read that last situation where he's like, the locals see us as the American Taliban. I bet you this is a trap. It just seems too good to be true. We should do this. This is a trap. This is a trap. It just seems too good to be true. We should do this. We should do that. And of course, Agent Orange and everything was like, no, you're going to do it this way. And then you cut to all those wounded and everything. And they're ready to go home in about less than a month, including Frank. And wounded and everything. And wounded, and they're ready to go home in about less than a month, including Frank. And he does his one man clearing the path through the house. And to me, I almost wonder if that's actually the planting of the seed of him becoming the Punisher. I mean, he's just using a gun, his fist. He gets shot in the shoulder. Then eventually he uses a knife and then a rock. He's just this one man killing machine going through that house.
That was pretty amazing, just watching him go through. And he really just didn't have anything to lose. He actually had everything to lose because he was trying to get home to his family. But he didn't have anything else to lose at that point, and he had to do it in order to make a path to figuratively and literally get home to his family. So he had some motivation to go ahead and do that. And everybody that he was there for, everybody that he was fighting with for that previous year was all around. And he kind of took it on himself as well, because as we find out during this episode, he argued against this mission because it was basically an ambush or a at least a killing field waiting to happen, and that's exactly what ambush or a kill, at least a or at least a kill or at least a killing field waiting to happen, and that's exactly what happened to them. So he was motivated all the way around, and it was brutal. It was something that was quite amazing that he was able to pull off by himself, but he was able to do it. And I would agree, if he hasn't done it before, this would definitely be the first Punisher fight in Frank Castle's life. What do you think about that, Haley?
Maybe. I mean, we don't know that for sure. We don't know what kind of missions they were going on in the year before this. So it might not be. It's just the first one, the earliest one in his timeline that we've seen.
Well, when Billy and Curtis are talking, they talk about how
Now that multiple word.
talking they talk talking they talk about how Frank, how each time, it was rough for him to come back, but he seemed to be like okay, and then all right, but then they talk about how that last time he just was never the same. So I do wonder, I mean, I think things were horrible, but I do think when they became part of Cerberus, this unsanctioned, heroin trafficking, Plano assassins, heroin trafficking, Plano assassin squad. I really Plano assassin. Plano assassin squad. I really do think that this is the moment where I really do think.
Oh,
I
what I did there before.
Squad. I really do think that this is the moment where he kind of broke and broke. And I think this is probably the first time he was this severe, this one-man army, and ending up with clobbering a guy. Ending up clobbering a guy with a rock so hard and so much that his face is covered in blood.
Yeah, I'll agree with you, Michelle, because I think all of their operations were textbooked up to this point because they planned well. They were expert operators. They knew their ingress, egress. They knew what their specific job was, their target, so to speak, was the whole time. And this was the first time that they were at odds in the planning stage that we saw, at least. And I'm assuming everything went well up to this point. That is an assumption. I'll grant you, Haley, but I think this is the first time that Frank was like this. Although we haven't seen Frank before he came part of Project Cerberus, so we don't know what sort of operations he was from there. But I think as far as Project Cerberus goes, this was the first time that he had to do anything like this. And he was basically saving his team and saving himself in the process. We also get to see Frank in Micro's lair. I don't know what to call it. It's cave, arrow cave, whatever you want to call it. Cave, arrow cave, whatever you want to call it. What to call it. It's cave, arrow cave, whatever you want to call it. What to call it. To call it. Cave, arrow cave, whatever you want to call it. And Micro's tied to a chair, and Frank is so paranoid. He's like, somebody else is coming. You're tied into somebody else. What's going on here? There's no explosives. What is the deal here? And you think he handled the situation well, or do you think he could have used some help there, Haley?
I don't think Frank ever handles most situations well. He's good when he's in a fight, but everything outside of a fight, he's paranoid and hostile and aggressive. And those are not good traits for just interacting with people in general.
I liked how Micro used Frank's, like, the basic training on how to torture. Frank talks about how torture isn't pain, it's routine. And then how that routine is broken. You don't have time, you don't have this. And then Micro uses that alarm thing. It reminded me so much of Lost, where if you didn't push in the numbers, then something would happen and people didn't know if to believe it or not. And then there's Micro. Ever so often, you got to make me do the code. You got to make me do the code. And then eventually he stabs Frank with a, it looks like just like a pencil, but it's a sedative.
It's a syringe.
Frank with a, it looks like just like a, stabs Frank with, it looks like just like a pencil, but it's a sedative.
It's a syringe.
Yeah. And he was just able to go, hey, a routine gives you a false sense of security and it makes you relax. And, you know, he got him.
He did. He didn't want to. He wanted Frank to trust him. That was never going to happen the way things were. I think Frank would have just let him die of. He wanted Frank to trust him. That was never going to happen the way things were. I think Frank would have just let him die of thirst or starvation or something in that chair before he did anything to him. I don't think he would have taken that next step had Lieberman not drugged him. And then when Lieberman did drug him, he woke up, he had the gun on him, but he still couldn't move. He was still dealing with the effects of the sedative. So I don't know when exactly was the moment that Frank crossed that line into some sort of trust, but I don't think it would have happened naturally with Lieberman tied up.
No, Lieberman having the gun on Frank's chest and not tying him up and like giving him like a cup of tea and such. Micro knew. Like a cup of tea. Micro knew. And Micro's like, look, we need each other. Let me be the man in the chair for you.
If I was Frank and if I had gone through that whole thing, I don't know if I would have trusted that tea. Would you have, Haley, if you were Frank in that particular case?
If Micro had wanted to do anything at that point, he could have. Like, Frank was already unconscious. What could possibly be in the tea? What could the tea possibly do at that point?
True enough. Well, the two of them find out that they're linked about everything because Micro was the intelligent agent that passed along the intelligence that basically led Frank's family to get killed. But Frank was the one who initiated the shot to begin with and killed the Afghan cop. So the two were unwitting. You know, that's so great crutch word. I crushed the crutch word. Killed the Afghan cop. The two were unwitting pairs in each one's demise, and they at least come to that conclusion. If Frank's bitter about not having his family while Lieberman does still have his family alive, but I don't know if there's a differentiation really between the two.
Well, and Lieberman also knew that the choices he was making were directly endangering his family. And Frank probably didn't know that at the time. And he's still telling himself that he's not the one that's responsible for his family's death.
We did see the point at which Lieberman was killed. They were trying to apprehend him or whatever. I don't think he was ever going to live off of that.
No, they weren't trying to apprehend him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wolf kept saying he has a weapon, and yeah, Wolf kept saying he. Yeah, Wolf kept saying he has a weapon, and obviously Lieberman did not have a weapon.
Hands up in the air.
Yeah, Lieberman, he was all like, well, Lieberman, he was all like, well, Lieberman, he was all.
Again, this is a case where I don't think I can combine it. So normally SFTH sounds, they're great to combine, but I think there's a little bit of tonal difference between the two here. And I think I'll just try it. If I do something like that, you're going to hear such a jump in pitch and tone that it's not going to work.
Lieberman, he was all like, well,
that was close.
Yeah, Lieberman, he was all like, well, if I don't do the right thing.
I'm going to go with that. that was a shot in the dark. So let's recap here. What I did is Michelle had said the same thing twice. And in order to take that out, I have had to go into her speech and choose a spot that I knew I could combine. S sounds, TH sounds, F sounds, they all make this really condensed waveform. And you can cut and splice that because it's a condensed waveform and your ear won't hear any jumps during them. As you can see here, there is a definite intensity difference between the two. There's also some breakouts on the one on the right. So I was skeptical about doing this. I might have not have done it had I not wanted to just explain it here. No. Probably just screwed it up. So let's see what this sounds like here. It's up in the air.
Yeah, Lieberman, he was all like, well,
What I did is I lengthened that, and I shouldn't have. Let's see what that sounds like.
yeah, Lieberman, he was all like, well, if I don't do the right thing, then
I can tell just because I just did it. But if I was listening, if I was a listener, I wouldn't have been able to tell. I don't think that was a jump cut basically in the audio. I'm going to leave that in because in my listeners' experience ears, I would prefer not to listen to somebody say the same thing twice and save some time versus listening to them say the same thing twice. It's audio editor's production preference, I guess. So we're going to keep that in and go with it. Hands up in the air.
yeah, Lieberman, he was all like, well, if I don't do the right thing, then what type of person am I to my kids? Like, what type of role model am I?
Sarah warned him, though. His wife, Sarah, she said, if you do this. His wife, Sarah, she said, him, though. His wife, Sarah, she said, if you do this, whatever happens is then your fault.
Yeah. And it goes back to like in the group circle. And it goes back to like in the group circle.
I'm just taking out the there.
And it goes back to like in the group circle with like Lewis and everything about how friendly fire.
Wow, 3 ums in a row there. She was really using some crutch words to get out her thought. And that doesn't need to be given to the audio listener later. Hundreds of people are going to listen to this, if not thousands later. So I'm saving them some time every time I take out an
Group circle with like Lewis and everything about how friendly fire.
Okay, I'm going to have to leave that in just because I could take it out actually, but I'm going to leave it in because it would be an awkward splice right there. I've done it before. I'm just learning to leave those in. It's just too much time to save even for a listener to be able to go in. It takes a long time to do that. And it doesn't sound right either because as you can see, the is very loud. And then you go to a softer H sound once the word starts. And it doesn't sound right. A trained audio ear can be able to pick that up. So I'm just going to leave that in. But I did take out 2 of the 3 ums.
Yeah. And it goes back to like in the group circle with like Lewis and everything about how friendly fire was actually covered up by the PR person. And this whole notion of we are putting our lives on the line for our country, but then our country lies to protect itself. And it does all of these things. And who can we trust?
Apparently, you can trust nobody in the Marvel Universe because everybody's going to double cross you at some point.
True story.
Talking about double crossing Billy Russo at some point.
True story.
Talking about double crossing Billy Russo definitely was around. You get the sense that they're trying to paint him. I'm going to cut that out. Don't know why I chose that and not the other one. Definitely was around. You get the sense that they're trying to paint him as maybe a somewhat of a good guy throughout this whole thing. And he's given Curtis money to maintain this group. But I think he's giving Curtis money to maintain this group because he thinks that Frank might be coming around. And he actually searched for something when they went to Frank's grave. And Curtis basically said, Frank told me something about how he felt over there or whatever. Billy was like, when did he tell you that? And right then and there, I think Billy knows the gig is up. Frank was still alive and still talking to Curtis recently.
Yeah, Curtis tried to cover it up.
Well, and we know at this.
Yeah, Curtis tried to cover it up.
Now, this is a case where I'm now double thinking my video edit. In an audio edit, I might have taken out Haley's quick there, because they're both agreeing at the same time. It's an affirmative agreement to what has already been said. I'm going to leave it in, because going back at this point, I will have to go back into the video. I will have to take Haley's affirmation out, re-render that short little spot, and then replace that audio right here. I've done it before. I'm just going to let it go at this time. Live and still talking to Curtis recently.
Yeah, Curtis tried to cover it up.
Well, and we know at this point in the Netflix Marvel.
Listen to it again. I don't know if I am going to leave that in.
Yeah, Curtis tried to cover it up.
Talking to Curtis recently.
Yeah, Curtis tried to cover it up.
No, I'll leave it.
Well, and we know at this point in the Netflix Marvel universe to not trust a well-dressed white guy with money.
Right, and if you're Curtis, you've worked with Frank. You're Curtis. You've worked with Frank. You're taking money from Billy to continue this mission that he has with vets. The vets themselves are plotting, because we see a little bit of that with guns and stuff like that. Oh my gosh, with the one guy who is there, I can't remember his name, but then he gets freaked out in his home and he ends up shooting at his own dad.
That's Lewis.
Lewis is definitely mixed up and probably should not have a firearm at his side at this point.
I was thinking that, yeah.
Oh, America.
True, but it's we've seen it. I'm really struggling with saying something right here just because of personal experience. And wow, this is a tough subject if you've been part of a similar incident. So I'm kind of struggling right here. Probably shouldn't have said anything. And if you're going to be emotionally affected by something on your podcast, you either need to make peace with saying something about it, or you need to not say anything about it at all. And I guess I'm struggling in between the two. So here we go. Arm at his side at this point.
I was thinking that, yeah.
Oh, America.
True, but we've seen it several times in the last few years that I don't think that's the best thing for a suffering returning service member. Over in the federal building, this is one case where the truncate silence did not work. And I have truncated that, I believe, to about 0.85. So yeah, about 5 seconds. That needs a longer pause. Needs a longer pause just because of the tempo of speech. Yes, I'm the one who's talking, but I've transitioned thought at that point. I'm going to leave all that in because it's an important statement for me to make. And it would be an important statement for anybody on the podcast to make. If Lauren was on this particular show, she would have also had something to say, I'm sure. Might have spurred the other two hosts to say something. Maybe not. It depends. Gun control is a very hot button topic, and I just skirted all the way around it there. But gun control and mental health are two things that really need to be looked at in this country. And we need to make a determination, and we've made a determination so far by not doing anything. But I don't know if something more needs to be done. Anyway, I made that statement there, whether implied or explicitly. And now I'm transitioning to something else. So in the podcast here, what I need to do is I need to create additional silence. So I'm going to go to generate. I haven't done this yet. Generate silence. And I'm going to put a half a second in there. It's usually what I put in to differentiate. I have put up to a second and a half extra in. So we'll see how this sounds. Thing for a suffering returning service member. Over in the federal, okay, I'm going to put another half second in there. And that should be enough. A suffering returning service member. Over in the federal building, we see Dinah is still investigating Wolf's death. She finds $30 million, or at least Sam finds $30 million. That pause, by the way, was enough to differentiate the two different thoughts, in my opinion. Other editors might have other opinions, but that sounded about right to me after doing this every week for 5 years. At one point in time, I did do truncate silence at 0.3 seconds, and I am going to cringe going back to listening to those podcasts because they must sound incredibly rushed and not conversational. Federal building, we see Dinah is still investigating Wolf's death. She finds $30 million, or at least Sam finds $30 million, and Sam reports it to her. It'll be interesting following that money and following what exactly Wolf was into, because it's not just the drug trade, as we know.
Again, another white guy with money.
Fair enough.
I like how Sam calls Dinah out on her hypocrisy, basically.
Yeah, about the trust factor.
Yeah. Sam's like, hey, you come in here and you want to do your lone wolf, stick it to the guy investigation. And now you're the one wolf, stick.
Is basically a crutch word. And there are times when you probably should leave that in. I'm guessing this is one of those times to take it out. And I knew I could take it out because there was an S sound, which is that really condensed waveform, which I know I can edit out, and it sounds okay as long as you maintain the length in there.
Sam's like, hey, you come in here and you want to do your lone wolf, stick it to the guy investigation. And now you're the one in the chair and you're sort of acting like you want to cover stuff up and maybe not go after certain things. I like that he was like, hey, come on.
So, Haley, what was your overall impression of the episode?
Setup. Lots and lots of setup.
I want to take that out, but then when she says setup, it is so low in comparison. Whenever you start talking louder. It just takes a while to project sound out. And so that should be a big S, and it's not. It's a smaller S. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave that in. And this is one of those cases in a normal conversation where you would expect the other person to perhaps use a verbal crutch and say So I'm going to leave that in. Now, in the grand scheme of things in podcast production, the do you have anything else to add probably shouldn't be in there. We do it all the time on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's just because of the back and forth we have on the particular main topic or episode or film that we're covering, whatever it is. So we should probably have the show notes structured such that I won't have to do that everybody will put their actual show notes in there of the points that they want to cover for the main topic. And as the lead host or producer, I will be going through the show notes to make sure that everybody has said what they've had to say. Also, if you want to do a further revision of the show notes, should probably organize those in some sort of flow so that we're not revisiting topics as they come up and that it makes sense front to back, whether it's chronological or whether it's topical based. So this question by in itself, that is a good question on whether you should have it in your show. Do you have anything else to say? That depicts poor preparation, in my opinion. I do it all the time on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. We do it all the time on Southern Tribune and other podcasts. I believe we even do that from time to time on Get a Geek. We don't usually do that on Better Podcasting unless we're riffing on a Better Podcasting download. But in any case, I'm going to go ahead and leave that in because there's no way to take it out and sound natural when she starts that S sound.
Setup.
You can just tell it's like, really excited, and then setup. It's not a good mix. If she was like, setup, that would have been an easier edit to make. But this I have to leave in. It's a very peculiar thing. Audio is subjective, and it's very it's about a bunch of really minute decisions when you're editing, as finely as I'm editing this. I'm just telling you what my thought process is in this particular case. I'm almost done with this segment, and then I'm going to go out, grab some breakfast or something, and then come back in and finish this edit. So I've got about 3 minutes left of this segment.
It's like, hey, come on.
So, Haley, what was your overall impression of the episode?
Setup. Lots and lots of setup.
That's what I was thinking, too. There was a lot of stuff that happened, and at the end of the episode, it was like, well, what exactly happened? There was a lot that did, but there was no conclusion. I think the suspense about Frank interrogating Micro, that was some continued suspense. And then, of course, the fight in Afghanistan, that was a lot of action. I was actually on the elliptical at the time, and I kept the heart pumping during the latter part of my workout. So cool on that. Latter part of my during the latter part of my workout. So cool on that.
We end this episode with our mission set up. Frank and Micro are going to work together, and they're not taking, they're not collecting evidence. They're not bringing these guys to justice. They're killing these guys. Justice. They're killing these guys. Everybody that was involved.
Well, Frank wants to kill him. I think if it's up to Micro, he could take it or leave it. He's good with the killing.
No, he said, that's fine with me.
Right, but he doesn't necessarily need them killed. But in the grand scheme of things, if they're taken out, then he doesn't have to worry about them anymore. So it's a bonus for him. Michelle, what did you think overall of the episode?
I liked that we finally found out what happened in Kandahar. Yeah, Kandahar right now.
It's Kandahar. It's Kandahar.
What happened in Kandahar?
It's Kandahar.
What happened in Kandahar?
It's Kandahar.
Oh, Kandahar. Sorry. Like Afghanistan now. Like it didn't drag out. Oh, Kandahar. Sorry. Like finally found out what happened in Kandahar.
It's Kandahar.
Oh, Kandahar. Sorry. Like Afghanistan now. Like it didn't drag out because people keep talking about this and that. We see a video. We find out. And because we find out the truth, talking about this and that. We see a video. And because we find out the truth and how Frank and Micro are connected, and even Dinah's connected, now we can go forward, like Haley said, find the people that Frank's going to kill.
And if I'm remembering most of the Marvel Netflix series, it's in at least 2, if not 3 arcs. So the first arc is like the first 3 to 5 episodes, and then we get at least first arc is like the first First arc is first 3 to 5. So the first arc is first 3 to 5. So the first arc is first 3 to I'm sorry. I just noticed that my microphone had been off for quite some time. Anyway, what I was doing right there is I was debating whether or not to take out that or that I actually like in there. And I deleted it, but it sounded too fast running into the next word. So that I silenced it. I used Control L to silence it. I think that will work. Let's see. So the first arc is first 3 to 5 episodes, and then we get at least a second arc for the rest of the series. Do you think this is going to be the same breakup, Haley, or do you think we're going to see something different?
I think they've kind of got a formula at this point, so we're probably nearing the end of like the setup arc, and then we'll have like the middle arc where they take on like the second tier villain, and then
I remember this from the video edit. There's 3 likes here. I wonder how many I can take out.
nearing the end of like the setup of like
Okay, I deleted that, and then I'm going to use a fade out. Usually on the tail end of stuff, you might not have to use a fade out. On the beginning of stuff, most of the time you need to use a fade in.
the end of the setup arc.
Okay, that works.
And then we'll have like
This will be another case. I'll fade out.
we'll have the middle arc where they take on like the second tier
Not going to be able to take out that. I can already see.
on like this on like on
This is not going to work. I've done this enough.
arc where they take on the second tier
Maybe.
arc where they take on the second tier villain.
It's not entirely natural, but unless you were listening hard to it in an audio editor, you're not going to determine that. So I've taken out 3 likes in there. Let's see what it sounds like.
I think they've kind of got a formula at this point, so we're probably nearing the end of the setup arc, and then we'll have the middle arc where they take on the second tier villain, and then the final arc that brings down the big bad.
Okay. Michelle, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. It's a good way to, a nice beginning, middle, and end. It's a nice way to break things up.
Okay. I'm looking. All right. Just so you know, I heard that,
A good way to, a nice beginning.
I don't think there's any way that I'm going to be able to take out that, from,
A nice beginning. A nice begin. A nice.
Yeah. I'm just going to do it so you hear. I've determined where the beginning of is. It's right there. I know that's an N. You know that from experience. It's the waveform. If I would not do a fade in here, you can see that big jump right there. So this is going to be one of those that I'm going to have to fade in. It's not going to sound all that great.
It's a good way to, a nice beginning, middle.
I'm doing Control Z to bring that back in. Yes, the word sounded great, but it just wasn't a good way to run the sentence. So unfortunately, a crushed word right here is going to be part of the sentence.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good way to, a nice beginning, middle, and end. It's a nice way to break things up.
Okay. I'm looking forward to next week. We'll be covering The Punisher episode 4 called Resupply. And yeah, any predictions on what's going to happen next week, Haley?
I think Frank's going to get a lot of guns.
That's typical Frank. Michelle, would you concur with that?
Yeah, Frank needs guns. He doesn't have a lot of guns right now. He's going to need that because, at the end, I love that he's like, look, I'm going to kill everybody. And Micro's just like, yeah, I can live with that. So they're going to need guns and grenades and other things that go boom.
Because it's The Punisher. I'm looking forward to that next week. In the meantime, Michelle, if you wanted to tell somebody if they're looking for other great geeky content for the week here, what else should you recommend to them?
Well, we have a lot of podcasts on the GonnaGeek.com network, including the Intellectual Podcast, episode 226, live from SD HooCon. The Intellectual Podcast hosts David S. Dawson and Whitney Wegman chat with well-known Whovians, Travis Ritchie, Inspector Spacetime, Doc Phineas, Mark Biaggi, and Ben Patton. This lively discussion covered the history of Doctor Who, the progression of the show over the years, and the aspects of it that keep us all drawn into the adventure. Again, that's the Intellectual Podcast, episode 226.
All right, I will end this by going into the end episode and bringing. Oh, you know what? Daredevil. I need the Daredevil one. We're doing Netflix. I have specific bumps for the end of segments for Netflix, MCU films, and for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And this is a Netflix one, so this is what is going to go in.
Episode 226.
Thank you for watching this live stream of me editing a Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast number 259. And this has been the audio edit in Audacity for segment. As you can see, there's about 13 minutes or so left. And I will start on that when I come back from breakfast. Y'all have a good morning. Bye.